Chris Bowen, thanks for being with us tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Brian, although technically I'm not actually being with you.
Yeah,
Can I
you're
make
with
that
us
point?
in the parliamentary studios, of course, though.
I'm in the parliamentary studio, but I'm not with you in the...
No, I
you're
understand
not
that.
here, Brian, and I'm not there. The point is that we're not together, and I don't know what you mean by us. Perhaps we can come to that later.
Well, thank you for being with us wherever we are.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be where I am.
You've introduced legislation this week to excise Australia from Australia. That's pretty impressive.
Now, Brian, that's a bit simplistic. What we've
Well,
done
that's what you've done,
is,
Chris Bowen.
Brian, the effect of the legislation will be to excise from Australia's migratory zone, from its migration zone, the continent of Australia.
So what's a migration zone?
Migration zone, Brian, is simply somewhere to where people may wish to migrate.
Like Australia?
Like Australia, Brian. But the point I'm making is we haven't excised Australia from itself. We've excised it from Australia as a migration zone.
And who's doing the excising?
Well, we are.
Australia.
That's correct, Brian. But let me get you to understand, we're not excising Australia from itself.
But hang on. Chris
We're
Bowen,
excising it as a migration zone.
How can you say we don't exist if we don't exist?
I'm not saying we don't exist, Brian. I'm saying we don't exist as a migration zone.
So, but what if someone else thinks we do exist as a migration zone?
Well, they'd be wrong, Brian, and we can prove they're wrong using this legislation we're bringing in. This is the
Chris
very
Bowen,
point we're trying to make to these people.
This is a legal point we're talking here.
It's a legal point, yes. This is the very basis of the legal point.
Yeah, we actually do exist as a migration zone, but legally we don't.
That's correct. That's correct, Brian. That's right.
Very clever, isn't it?
It's brilliant, isn't it? It's
Very
absolutely brilliant. I think this is some of the most brilliant legislation I've ever... This is a brilliant, brilliant idea.
Yeah. Chris Bowen, what happens if someone lands in a place that isn't a migration zone?
Well, they wouldn't have to be taken back to where they perhaps hadn't come from in the first place.
And who wouldn't do this?
Well, we'd fail to do that ourselves, Brian, not using our ships.
Because we'd want to make sure it never happened, wouldn't we?
We'd want to make absolutely sure that it never happened, yeah.
Thanks for your time tonight.
Time? You want to discuss time as well as space, Brian? Oh, the big ones tonight. Bring them on. We might need them for more legislation.